Hi and welcome to the Fancy Comma YouTube. Today I'm joined by Dr. Stephanie Castillo. Dr. Stephanie Castillo is an award-winning video producer and digital storyteller with a PhD in science communication from Vanderbilt University. Her expertise lies in investigating the perception of representation and storytelling in science media among young adults through her extensive research in SciComm. Her digital platform, Phuture Doctors, showcases Dr. Castillo's dedication to promoting underrepresented STEM professionals and their extraordinary careers. With a solid scientific background, teaching experience, and training in science filmmaking, she creates engaging multimedia science stories tailored for audiences age 13 and above. Welcome, Stephanie, or should I say Dr. Castillo. So most scientists, I thought it was really interesting that you got training in science communication because most scientists don't get any sort of science communication training. So what kind of work did you do at your PhD in Vanderbilt?
Yeah, I got really fortunate in being able to do a PhD in science communication. I did it through Vanderbilt had an interdisciplinary PhD program that you just had to pitch what your PhD would look like and have a very interdisciplinary committee that would support you through it. I initially was actually trying to pursue a PhD in chemistry, but 2 years into my grad program is when I learned about science communication. So I was able to pivot after 4 years in my chemistry program to end up doing a PhD in science communication. So I started making videos and teaching myself how to make videos through YouTube tutorials and eventually make science content, kind of mimicking the styles of already like popular science YouTubers. And I was able to convert what the work that I was doing online to do my PhD in that. And so I started looking into representation and storytelling. And for a science communication PhD, uh, I had to look into kind of like what is the question I'm looking into. So like does representation matter is a huge question, but I had to narrow it down to being okay, does talking about the background or the backstory of a scientist help engage the viewers, which would be like my young adult audiences or like, high school and undergraduate students. Does it make them, or does the scientist perceive more relatable or more warm when we learn about their backstory? Or what is the perception of the scientist when they're only explaining or talking about like their scientific work and expertise and like the details of their work? And so it was interesting to kind of get feedback from students. I did an IRB just to get feedback from students of like how they perceive different types of narratives and the common themes of what they perceive the scientist based on the different narratives.
Can we read your thesis online? How did your PhD work? I guess my question should be, how did your PhD thesis work lead to your work through Phuture Doctors? And tell us about Phuture Doctors and what all is happening with Phuture Doctors.
So Phuture Doctors was just a brand that I started on Instagram as my social media handle. And then this, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of the science content that I presented, or a lot of the science content that I watch on YouTube were usually just one demographic presented that are making like millions of views. And I realized that not a lot of people look like me or look like other underrepresented folks in STEM. And so my goal was to kind of highlight women and racial and ethnic representation in front of the camera, and explore the different types of careers that are out there, because also I wanted this to be used as a tool in the classroom was my initial vision for Phuture Doctors. But for the most part, it was just a creative outlet that I started when I was a grad student. Um, and so, yeah, so because I built a platform and started making my own content and getting support for that, when it came to me wanting to do my PhD in science communication, I was able to take the stuff I already made on my own on social media, featuring all of my friends and colleagues. And that was who was featured then in like my dissertation study. And so I featured the scientist, her name is Dr. Corey Grayson. She's a biomedical engineer. And so in my research work, she was my main character. She's a biomedical engineer who so happens to be a Black woman. And so the first video that I had, the first treatment that I had was showing what her background story is, like what led her to want to become a scientist and want to learn how to do research, or what led her to want to become a scientist and do the research that she's doing, versus the other one where it's just we're looking at, we're explaining, we're doing like a science explainer of the research of about prostate cancer and the treatment that she's developing for that. So that's essentially what my thesis is. I think it's published in like the Vanderbilt thesis portal, but I'm still working on actually publishing it in a science communication journal. But for the most part, it's all on my website, kind of the videos that I made.
Um, Tell us about Phuture Doctors. Like, what do you do in Phuture Doctors? You produce multimedia, science stories. Like, what all does that involve? And how did you get start Phuture Doctors, and what all do you do there?
Yeah, so Phuture Doctors is just my social media name, is my brand. And once I graduated from grad school, then I just continued on using it. And now I formed an LLC so then I can freelance full time. So I produce, the type of work that I do are usually just in three branches. And so it's either consulting, producing media, or trainings. So I get to go to universities or get invited to talks to do science communication workshops, since science communication isn't formally trained in our universities, um, or at least for not all departments or all universities. It's not always a thing that students are being trained on. And then I work with other universities or science organizations, or right now for a company called STEM Media, producing content. So I can either, as a producer, I go from anywhere from, filming, editing, animating, hosting, writing, and just overall overseeing the production from concept to publishing on a platform is the type of work that I help with when it comes to like video production services. And then with consulting, um, yeah, there's just a lot of organizations who maybe don't have a social media strategy, or they're kind of outdated in the sense of, they want to be in the digital space and not really know how to do that, and so they kind of bring me in to kind of help them workshop their project or strategize their science communication plan. So yeah, but I've been excited to be able to create a platform and capitalize off of that in this time to continue to do science communication work full time.
You're a multimedia SciCommer. What do you do, and what is your favorite part about being a multimedia SciCommer?
I guess I enjoy being able to dabble into multiple things. So one week I'll be producing a video or a series for PBS. Another week I am hosting, traveling to, I'm traveling so I can do a workshop at a science conference. And so I like the flexibility and the versatility that I get to do and get to apply my work in.
Have you made any cool SciComm videos lately?
I've done quite a few stuff. We're on the tail end of a show that we're producing for PBS's YouTube channel called Terra. And so I'm executive producer for Hungry Planet, that I'm producing with my friend Alex Danis, or Dr. Alice Danis. But it's a it's a food science show, but we're focused on the sustainability aspect. Like, how do we make sure that food is going to stay on our plates for years to come? Prior to Hungry Planet, I produced with STEM Media Why Am I Like This, which is an evolutionary biology show, which is really fun and exciting. I hosted a game show for KiwiCo, which is like a science, or not science, but it's very like STEM based, like subscription boxes, which is really exciting. And then I produce a lot of content for this one education studio called Galactic Polymath, and I do a lot of science explainers for their curriculum. So yeah, so those are all kind of like the things that I have on my website and my video portfolio. You can kind of see like all the work that I've published, that people can go and check out.
That's something that I think is probably going to be a larger part of curriculums in general, is just like multimedia content, because now every kid has a laptop these days, or like they have like an iPad and everything. So I don't know how much you've worked with children. Um, have you worked with like children specifically in the educational sphere with all their digital devices? Because I tutor children, and they do online classes these days, and they're so much better connected than me. It's insane.
Yeah, I haven't. I got to like sit in on classes every now and then as like a visiting scientist. But yeah, like working on laptops are very intertwined with a lot of the, you know, work or classwork that they do. But yeah, but aside from critical thinking, it's just kind of there's so much information out there. I think as science communicators, it's important for us to practice transparency so there's less confusion, less ambiguity, and also just kind of bring people into the process of making science. And when we get new information, then it's not really so alarming when we have to change our consensus based on new information that we get. And so critical thinking is a huge part of it, but I think also just transparency and continuing community engagement at the community level. So I think will also help with that.
Yeah, I feel like in the future, education will be so much different because I was chatting with this girl and I was helping her learn about the Tea Party, and then as she was tutoring with me, she was also chatting with her teacher as well, like remotely. So I think multimedia is kind of the future for education, and I guess also for science communication. Are there a lot of PhD programs for science communicators? Like, do you know of any efforts that are exist to train more scientists in SciComm?
Hold on, let me pull up I have like a resource page on my website. But for the most part, there's like mass communications or multimedia communications in general, and then for most universities, it's just finding the right departments and professors that have the lens or the focus on science, because not it's not explicit that there's a science communication PhD in a lot of these programs. It's more underneath the umbrella of like mass communication.
And I think we should have more of that. And I think you should be able to like get a minor in science communication. Like as a scientist, like let's say you're doing your PhD in neuroscience, you could get like a concentration in SciComm. Like I think that'd be really fun.
Yeah, I think because a lot of, at least in my experience, science communication always just felt like, again, like an outreach afterthought instead of it being intertwined with the training that we do when we're training for like a scientific degree. But I know that Vanderbilt University, we actually have a science communication major for undergraduate students. And so they can either major or minor in science communication, which is really exciting. And I think there's some universities that are coming more into that. I believe MIT or at least Harvard have a really big science communication training for the grad students specifically. But yeah, I feel like it needs to be taken a little bit more serious, and so I hope that's the trend that we continue to see.
I know MIT has something for undergrads. They have a science communication curriculum because I helped with the implementing the evaluation for that. It's called Communication Intensive in Major. Thanks. Yeah, it's called Communication Intensive in Major, and it's like I just did another video about this, but basically like we do like biolab because I was pre-med for a short while in undergrad, and then I took biolab, which was really hard, and then I had an add-on course that was a SciComm course, so we would like get taught by a PhD biologist that was a science writer. So we do stuff like sit in class and read a paper about the Framingham Heart Study and then write a summary of the abstract and like what actually happened in this study. And we did like an in-depth thing. And I wish more schools to kind of follow the lead of like MIT and also Vanderbilt and had this curriculum for students. And I feel like there's no shortage of science communicators. They could definitely just like hire us and we could do it for them. But it's been a pleasure chatting with you.
Thanks for having me.